A dense jungle canopy hides one of history's greatest secrets. Beneath the green roof of the Amazon lie the ruins of vast, sophisticated cities, a discovery made possible by a revolutionary technology called LIDAR. This video will completely transform your understanding of the Americas, revealing how advanced civilizations thrived where we once saw only empty wilderness. You will see how laser scans from the sky are rewriting history books, challenging everything we thought we knew about indigenous societies and their relationship with the environment. How did entire urban networks vanish without a trace, and what can their ingenious adaptations teach us about our own future? What does it mean to discover that a world we considered primeval was actually shaped by human hands for millennia? For centuries, the story we told ourselves about the Amazon was a story of emptiness. It was painted as a primeval wilderness, an untouched green ocean stretching for thousands of miles, where only small, nomadic tribes could survive. This idea of a pristine forest, a green desert, was not born from observation but from assumption. When early European explorers first pushed into its depths, they saw what they expected to see. They came from a world of stone castles, walled towns, and cleared farmland. To them, a landscape without visible monuments or plowed fields was a landscape without civilization. They dismissed the sophisticated societies they did encounter, framing the entire continent as a vast, untamed space waiting to be filled. This colonial perspective became a historical trap. It created the myth of the pristine wilderness, a powerful narrative that shaped not just popular imagination but scientific inquiry for generations. Archaeologists working under this assumption often looked for cities in the wrong places, using models based on ancient Egypt or medieval Europe. They expected to find concentrated stone pyramids in clearings, not dispersed networks of towns integrated into the forest itself. The indigenous peoples were consistently cast as simple hunter-gatherers, living in harmony with but never shaping their world on a grand scale. This was a profound underestimation, a bias that ignored the incredible diversity and ingenuity of New World civilizations. While historians celebrated the complex kingdoms and trade routes of medieval Europe and Asia, the possibility of equally complex societies in the Amazon was largely dismissed. It was a foundational error that made the jungle seem not just dense with trees, but dense with mystery. This is why the recent discoveries are so revolutionary. They are not merely adding a new chapter to history, they are forcing us to burn the old table of contents and start again. The truth was always there, hidden in plain sight, beneath a canopy of leaves and a thicker canopy of preconception. To finally see it, science needed a new kind of vision, one that could look past the forest and into the forgotten soil below. The dense canopy did not give up its secrets easily. For decades, the real detective work happened on the ground, with archaeologists wading through rivers, cutting through thick undergrowth, and listening closely to the stories of the people who called the forest home. Their tools were machetes, shovels, and an immense amount of patience, and slowly, piece by piece, they began to find clues that the old story of an empty wilderness was wrong. They discovered not stone pyramids, but enormous geometric shapes sculpted from the earth itself. In clearings, they found networks of deep ditches and tall mounds forming perfect circles and squares, structures so large they could only be seen properly from above, yet they were built entirely from soil. These were not natural formations. They were the fingerprints of a society that organized its landscape with clear, purposeful design. Even more telling was the very ground beneath their feet. In patches across the basin, researchers identified a mysterious, incredibly fertile black soil known as Terra Preta, or dark earth. This wasn't ordinary jungle soil. It was a human-made super soil, engineered centuries ago by mixing charcoal, broken pottery, compost, and manure with the poor native earth. This process, a form of ancient biochar technology, created plots of land so rich they remain productive to this day. The existence of Terra Preta was a silent but powerful testament. It proved that people weren't just passing through. They were settling down, investing generations of labor to enrich the land, to farm intensively, and to feed a substantial population. Every pottery shard found embedded in that dark earth was another fragment of a lost story. Perhaps the most crucial clues came from the living communities within the forest. For generations, indigenous elders shared oral histories about their ancestors, describing how they shaped the rivers, planted vast orchards, and built great settlements. These narratives were often dismissed by outsiders as myth or allegory, but for the archaeologists listening, they were vital maps. They were guides pointing toward specific trees that were planted centuries ago, or to riverbanks that held the remains of fish weirs and canals. Researchers like Anna Roosevelt spent years, even decades, following these leads. Her work in the lower Amazon, meticulously mapping mounds and excavating sites, provided some of the first concrete evidence of complex, sedentary societies that dated back over 1,000 years. She proved that before European contact, there were chiefdoms here with sophisticated art, agriculture, and social structure. Yet, for all its heroism, this ground-based archaeology faced an almost insurmountable challenge. It was like trying to read a grand epic novel by only looking at a few scattered words on a single page. A team could spend an entire year clearing and mapping just one mound complex, only to have the jungle reclaim it the moment they left. They knew there were more mounds out there, more ditches, more patches of terra preta, but how many and how were they connected? Was this a collection of isolated villages, or was it something far more extensive? The scale of the Amazon is almost incomprehensible. It is a continent within a continent, trying to understand its human history by excavating a few small clearings was an exercise in profound frustration. They had found undeniable proof of a puzzle, but they were missing almost the entire picture. They needed a way to pull back to see the whole board. This gnawing limitation, this hunger to see what the jungle was hiding, is what made the arrival of a new technology not just exciting but utterly transformative. The key would not be found by looking up from the soil, but by looking down from the sky. The breakthrough came not from the ground, but from the air, with a technology that sees through the very thing that hid the truth for so long. Light detection and ranging, or LIDAR, is essentially a form of high-tech echolocation using light. Picture a specialized plane or drone flying a precise grid pattern over the jungle. Mounted on its belly is a device that fires millions of tiny, invisible laser pulses toward the Earth every single second. Now, imagine each one of those pulses as a microscopic runner. It races down from the aircraft, hits the first thing it encounters, which is usually the top of the canopy, a tangle of leaves and branches, and a part of it immediately bounces back to the sensor. But the laser is so finely tuned that not all of its light is reflected by that first layer. Some of those photon runners slip through gaps in the foliage, continuing their journey downward. They hit lower branches, vines, and finally, if they are lucky, the actual forest floor. Each of these encounters sends a return signal back to the aircraft sensor. By measuring the exact time it takes for each pulse to make its round trip a journey measured in billionths of a second, the onboard computer can calculate an incredibly precise distance. After millions upon millions of these measurements are stitched together, something magical happens. Researchers can digitally filter out all the returns from vegetation. They tell the software to ignore the signals from the leaves and the branches. What remains is a pristine, three-dimensional map of the bare earth beneath, a ghostly landscape revealed for the first time in centuries. It is like having the ability to reach down from the sky and carefully lift away the entire green blanket of the forest, exposing the skin of the continent below. This is the X-ray vision that archaeologists had dreamed of for generations. Where ground teams saw an impenetrable wall of green, LIDAR reveals gentle slopes, subtle depressions, and most importantly, the geometric patterns of human engineering. A mound that would take a year to map by hand is captured in a single flyover. A ditch system winding for miles through the undergrowth is laid bare in perfect detail on a computer screen. The technology is entirely non-invasive. It does not disturb a single leaf, making it a perfect partner to the careful, respectful work of excavation. It transforms the search from a painstaking, blind groping in the dark to a process of guided discovery. Scientists now have a map to the past, but a map, no matter how detailed, is not the territory itself. It is a guide filled with symbols and shapes that demand interpretation. What appeared on those first digital landscapes was not the familiar skyline of a medieval European city. It was something entirely different, a new urban language written into the earth itself. The ghostly maps revealed by LIDAR did not show empty land. They displayed the unmistakable blueprints of a forgotten world. One of the most stunning revelations came from a region in Bolivia known as the Llanos de Mojos, a vast tropical savanna that floods for months each year. Here, the lasers peeled back the grassy cover to expose the lost cities of the Casarabe culture, a society that flourished from around 500 to 1400 AD, and of which almost nothing was known. What appeared on the digital terrain models was a landscape of breathtaking ambition and organization. The scans showed not just a few scattered mounds, but entire urban constellations. At their hearts were monumental platform mounds, some towering over 70 feet high, which likely supported temples or the residences of community leaders. Surrounding these central pyramids were expansive U-shaped platforms and orderly arrangements of smaller residential mounds, all laid out with precise geometric intention. Connecting everything was a sprawling network of straight, raised causeways that stretched for miles, linking these urban nodes like the spokes of a giant wheel. But perhaps the most ingenious features were the waterworks. The Casarabe people did not fight their flooded environment, they mastered it. The LIDAR maps revealed a complex hydraulic system of canals, reservoirs, and embankments that would have managed the seasonal waters, providing fish, transportation routes, and moisture for crops during the dry season. This was a civilization built in harmony with the rhythms of the Amazon basin, not in spite of them. Leading the research, archaeologist Heiko Prumers described this layout as a form of low-density urbanism. This is a crucial concept that shatters our traditional image of an ancient city. Think not of the crowded, walled towns of medieval Europe with their narrow streets and dense housing. Instead, picture something more akin to a modern, well-planned suburb or a vast agricultural estate, but on a civic scale. The Casarabe metropolis was a network of neighborhoods, ceremonial centers, and farmland spread across a managed landscape, all connected by those raised causeways. People lived in clusters surrounded by gardens, orchards, and managed forest, with easy access to both the ceremonial heart of their community and the vital wetland resources. This was a way of life that balanced urban social complexity with a deep, sustainable integration into the natural world. They transformed a challenging, seasonally flooded savanna into a productive garden city that sustained a large population for nearly a millennium. The discovery forces a profound shift in perspective. For so long, archaeologists looked for concentrated, dense ruins. The Casarabe culture proves that advanced societies in the Amazon expressed their complexity differently. Their monument was not a single pyramid of stone, but the entire shaped landscape itself. Their achievement was an ecosystem of their own making. If this intricate, low-density urban network existed in Bolivia, where else might similar patterns lie hidden? waiting for the laser's eye to reveal them. These digital blueprints reveal a masterclass in jungle urban planning. The settlements were not haphazard clusters of shelters, but carefully orchestrated landscapes designed for function, ceremony, and community life. At the heart of many sites, LIDAR uncovered central ceremonial complexes, often built atop the largest platform mounds. These were the spiritual and social anchors, places for gathering, ritual, and the exercise of authority, overlooking precisely aligned plazas that could have hosted markets or public events. Radiating out from these centers were the raised causeways, the true arteries of these societies. These were not mere footpaths. They were substantial, elevated roadways built up with soil and often lined with drainage ditches. In a land of seasonal floods and dense undergrowth, these causeways served a dual purpose. They kept travelers dry and connected during the wet season, and they acted as clear, maintained corridors through the jungle, linking central towns to outlying satellite communities, agricultural zones, and resource areas. This network implies a level of social coordination and collective labor that is staggering. Building and maintaining miles of these embankments required a shared vision and organized effort, a communal commitment to connectivity that echoes the civic spirit behind the cobbled streets and maintained bridges of a medieval European town, yet perfectly adapted to the Amazon's rhythms. The infrastructure speaks to both practical genius and social complexity. Defensive features like deep ditches and embankments surrounding some settlements suggest these were not entirely peaceful times, indicating communities that planned for their security. The strategic placement of residential mounds themselves was a stroke of environmental engineering. By building their homes on raised earthen platforms, people achieved crucial benefits. They gained better drainage during floods, staying above the waterline. They enjoyed improved air circulation, a vital comfort in the humid tropics, and they secured greater visibility and safety, able to see over the surrounding vegetation. This was architecture in deep conversation with the forest. Furthermore, the integration of these road networks facilitated more than just local travel. They would have been essential for trade and communication, allowing for the movement of goods like pottery, tools, ceremonial items, and food surpluses across a wide region. This connectivity hints at a functioning economic system, a web of exchange that bound communities together. Every ditch dug for defense, every mound raised for a home, every causeway laid for travel, reveals a society that did not simply exist within its environment, but actively sculpted it. They mastered the challenges of the tropical world, creating a built landscape so efficient and well-planned that it could sustain large, settled populations for centuries. This level of ambition, visible in every aligned plaza and every mile of roadway, forces a compelling question. What was the economic engine that powered such grand projects? What kind of wealth in resources or knowledge allowed these societies to invest so profoundly in shaping their world? A city cannot be built on an empty stomach. The sheer scale of the earthworks, the miles of causeways, and the sprawling residential mounds all point toward one undeniable reality. These were not small villages, but societies supporting populations that likely numbered in the tens of thousands. For generations, a central dogma held this to be impossible. The conventional wisdom was brutally simple. The Amazon soil, outside of rare riverbank deposits, was notoriously poor, a thin layer of nutrients quickly washed away by heavy rains. How could such exhausted earth possibly feed the dense populations needed to build those monumental landscapes? The LIDAR maps provided the stunning visual proof, but the true answer was found by looking closer at the ground the lasers had revealed. These civilizations did not struggle with poor soil, they mastered it. They engineered an agricultural revolution that turned the rainforest into a sustainable breadbasket. One of the most brilliant innovations visible from the air is the vast network of raised fields. In seasonally flooded areas, like those around the Casarabe cities, LIDAR shows grids of perfectly aligned, rectangular mounds rising above the water table. These were not natural. Communities would pile up soil, vegetation, and mulch to create elevated planting beds, sometimes stretching for hundreds of acres. This simple yet profound technology solved multiple problems at once. The raised height protected precious root crops like manioc, squash, and maize from drowning during the floods. The decomposing biomass within the mounds acted as a slow-release fertilizer, and the canals between the fields provided drainage, irrigation, and a habitat for fish and turtles, creating a protein-rich aquatic garden. This was integrated farming at its most efficient, a symbiotic system where waste from the canals could be used to enrich the mounds, and crops benefited from the managed moisture. But the true cornerstone of Amazonian food security was something even more remarkable, a living legacy still felt today. Scattered across the basin are expansive patches of Terra Preta, the anthropogenic dark earth. This is not ordinary jungle soil. It is a human-made super soil deliberately created centuries ago. Generations of people enriched the land by mixing charcoal from cooking fires, broken pottery, food waste, compost, and manure into the native earth. This process, a form of ancient biochar technology, did something incredible. The charcoal acted like a sponge, locking nutrients into the soil and preventing them from leaching away in the rain. The result was plots of land so profoundly fertile that they remain productive even now, centuries after their creators have passed. Researchers like Carolina Levis have shown through meticulous study that many of the most abundant and useful tree species in the Amazon today are not random wild growth, but descendants of orchards planted in this rich dark earth. The forest itself remembers their gardens. This was not casual gardening. This was a deep, generational investment in place. Creating and maintaining Terra Preta required foresight, communal labor, and a sophisticated understanding of ecology. It provided a reliable and abundant food surplus year after year, decade after decade. That surplus is the hidden engine behind everything we see in the LIDAR scans. It freed large portions of the population from the daily grind of hunting and foraging, allowing for the specialization of labor. With full stomachs secured, people could become full-time engineers to plan those causeways, artisans to craft intricate pottery, or laborers to move the earth for mounds and plazas. It enabled population growth and the social complexity needed to coordinate such grand projects. This sustainable agro-engineering utterly shatters the old myth of the Amazon as a place that could only support tiny, scattered groups. These societies did not live lightly on the land. They partnered with it, actively enriching and shaping it to support a flourishing urban life. Their greatest monument was not a pyramid of stone, but a living, fertile landscape. Such a profound and successful partnership with nature hints at a world far removed from our own. What spiritual beliefs, what understanding of their place in the cosmos, inspired and sustained this centuries-long labor of cultivation and construction. The earthen pyramids rising from the clear digital maps were more than just impressive feats of engineering. They were the beating hearts of these jungle civilizations, the sacred anchors around which all of life revolved. To stand in the vast plaza at the base of one of these platform mounds, looking up at a structure 70 feet high and built entirely by hand, would have been an experience of profound awe. These were the Amazon's answer to the great cathedrals of medieval Europe. Just as a Gothic spire reached toward heaven, drawing a community together in shared faith and identity, these earthen pyramids served as a physical bridge between realms. They were stages for cosmic drama, where priests and leaders performed rituals tied to the cycles of the sun, the moon, and the seasons. Archaeologists have found that the orientation of many plazas and causeways align precisely with solstice sunrises or other celestial events. This was not accidental. It reveals a deep cosmological understanding, a society that read the sky as a sacred text and built their world in harmony with its rhythms. The grand plaza below the mound was the communal living room. This is where people would gather for markets, for festivals, for announcements from their leaders, and to witness the ceremonies unfolding above them. It was a space designed for collective experience, reinforcing social bonds and a shared identity across a dispersed population. The scale of labor involved is almost beyond comprehension. Constructing just one of the larger mounds required moving millions of cubic meters of soil, all without the wheel, without metal tools, and without draft animals. This was a task of generations. It speaks to a social power of immense persuasive force. Someone had the vision to plan a project that would not be finished in their lifetime. Someone had the authority to coordinate the labor of thousands, organizing teams to dig, to carry baskets of earth, and to sculpt the landscape according to a sacred blueprint. This suggests a likely theocratic leadership, where political power was inseparable from spiritual authority. The ability to build the mound was proof of a leader's connection to the gods and the ancestors, a divine mandate made visible in the transformed earth. The common person who contributed their labor was not just building a platform, they were participating in a holy act, weaving themselves and their family into the eternal story of their people. Their sweat and toil were offerings, cementing their place in a cosmic order. These ceremonial centers were not lonely monuments in the wilderness. They were linked together by those straight, raised causeways, creating an interconnected ritual landscape. A person could walk from their residential mound through managed orchards and onto a sacred road that led directly to the plaza of a major center. These causeways were more than practical roads, they were processional pathways. During important festivals, they would have been filled with people traveling to a central location, their journey itself a form of pilgrimage. This network physically and spiritually unified the low-density city. It connected the everyday life of the garden plots and family homes to the transcendent power of the ceremonial core. In this worldview, there was no separation between the human realm and the spiritual one. The forest was alive with meaning, the rivers were pathways for ancestors, and the shaped earth of their city was a mirror of the cosmos. This profound, integrated belief system sustained them for centuries, providing the cohesion and purpose needed to build a civilization in the jungle. It was a delicate, magnificent balance, a testament to human adaptability and spiritual depth. And it was a balance poised on the brink of a collapse so total, so devastating, that it would erase these cities from memory and bury their stories under a green sea of forgetting. Yet this magnificent balance could not last forever. The great urban networks of the Amazon, which had flourished for centuries, did not fade slowly into the twilight. Their story ended in a silence so complete that it allowed a new myth to be born. By the time the first European ships appeared on the horizon, many of these vibrant cities were already empty, their plazas quiet, their causeways overgrown, their earthen pyramids dissolving back into the landscape from which they were made. The forest, in its relentless growth, had already begun to erase them. So what happened? How does a civilization of such scale and sophistication simply vanish? The answer lies not in a single cataclysm, but in a perfect storm of converging pressures that proved too much for even the most resilient society to bear. The first and most devastating blow likely came from across the ocean, long before any conquistador set foot in their settlements. European diseases like smallpox, measles, and influenza traveled ahead of the explorers themselves, carried along indigenous trade routes that once moved pottery and ideas. These were illnesses for which the Amazonian peoples had no natural immunity. Historians estimate that in some regions, up to 90% of the population may have been lost within the first century of contact. Imagine the social catastrophe. The knowledge of how to maintain the complex canal systems, the communal memory for ceremonial rituals, the labor force needed to repair the raised fields, all of it was eroded in a few terrible generations. A society built on collective labor and shared tradition cannot survive such a demographic collapse, but disease may not have been the only challenge. Paleoclimatologists who study ancient weather patterns have found evidence of significant climatic shifts during this period. Core samples from lake beds and soil layers suggest the Amazon basin experienced severe, prolonged droughts in the centuries around European contact. For a civilization whose brilliant water management was designed for seasonal flooding, a prolonged dry period would have been catastrophic. Reservoirs would have emptied, canals would have run dry, and the carefully balanced agro-ecosystem of raised fields and orchards would have faltered. This environmental stress, combined with the societal trauma of epidemic illness, could have sparked internal conflict or forced populations to disperse in search of reliable water, unraveling the social fabric that held the urban networks together. It is a haunting parallel to events unfolding across the Atlantic at roughly the same time. While the Black Death was reshaping the societies of medieval Europe, a different kind of plague, compounded by climatic hardship, was bringing a quiet apocalypse to the cities of the Amazon. The result was not a sudden, violent end, but a gradual fading. As populations dwindled, the forest reclaimed its territory with astonishing speed. Within a few human lifetimes, the geometric lines of plazas blurred under roots and vines. The once sacred mounds became simple hills, homes to trees instead of priests. The causeways, those symbols of connection and unity, were broken by falling trunks and swallowed by the understory. The people who remained, the survivors of this great unraveling, adapted to a new reality. They may have maintained some of the old orchards or continued to enrich patches of Terra Preta, but the grand civic project, the collective dream of shaping a continent, was over. Their ancestors' world became legend, a story told around fires about a time when people moved mountains of earth, and when outsiders finally arrived, pushing into what they saw as untouched wilderness, they saw only the green wall. They had no eyes for the shaped hills beneath their feet, no context for the rich black soil they occasionally stumbled upon. The silence of the abandoned cities was mistaken for a silence that had always been there. This allowed the powerful, enduring myth of the pristine, empty Amazon to take root. It is a poignant and sobering reminder. It shows that no society, no matter how ingeniously adapted to its environment, is immune to the confluence of external shock and internal strain. The collapse was a profound human and cultural loss, the erasure of countless stories, innovations, and ways of seeing the world. But it also leaves us with a compelling, almost urgent question. If we missed the evidence of civilizations this vast for so long, what other chapters of the human story remain hidden beneath the canopy, waiting for the light of a laser to bring them back into our shared history? The quiet apocalypse that befell the Casarabe was not an isolated tragedy. The laser's eye, having proven its worth in Bolivia, began to scan across the vastness of the Amazon basin, and everywhere it looked, it found the same story written in the earth. The success in the Llanos de Mojos was not a lucky find. It was a key that unlocked a continent. From the dense forests of Brazil to the riverine networks of Colombia and Ecuador, subsequent LIDAR surveys have peeled back the green veil to reveal a staggering tapestry of human engineering, proving that the cities of Bolivia were just one thread in a much grander fabric. In Brazil's Upper Tapajós Basin, for example, the scans have revealed a landscape meticulously organized by human hands. Researchers have mapped not just dozens, but hundreds of precise geometric earthworks. These are large ditches forming perfect circles and squares, some over 1,000 feet in diameter, their symmetry undeniable against the organic chaos of the forest. Nearby, the lasers outline the clear footprints of fortified villages, their defensive ditches and palisade lines still visible centuries later. This was not a land of scattered nomads, but a populated, managed territory where communities invested immense labor to define their space for ceremony, for gathering, and for protection. Further northwest, in the Colombian Amazon, the story grows even more complex. LIDAR flights there have unveiled something astonishing: vast agricultural landscapes that stretch to the horizon. The digital terrain models show extensive networks of raised fields and drainage channels, evidence of intensive, organized farming on a scale that could feed thousands. Connecting these agricultural zones are straight, engineered causeways, the same kind of road networks seen in Bolivia, weaving between residential mounds and ceremonial centers. These features point to the existence of previously unknown, powerful chiefdoms that manage their environment with a sophistication that rivals any ancient society. Each new flyover in each new region adds crucial pieces to a continent-wide puzzle. The emerging picture is not one of a single, monolithic Amazonian civilization, but of a brilliant mosaic. It was a world of diverse cultures and languages, each adapting to their specific corner of the basin, yet likely connected through shared ideas, trade routes, and perhaps even spiritual concepts, as seen in the recurring themes of mound building and celestial alignment. This expanding body of evidence leads to a humbling and thrilling conclusion. The sites we have documented so far, as breathtaking as they are, likely represent only the tip of the iceberg. The Amazon covers an area roughly the size of the continental United States. We have scanned only a tiny fraction of it. Archaeologists now estimate that potentially thousands, even tens of thousands, of such sites remain hidden, waiting for their turn under the laser. Every new survey has a chance to rewrite the regional map, to reveal a new center of power, a new innovation in land management, a new chapter in the human story of the Americas. This is not merely adding dots to a map, it is revolutionizing our very understanding of what this place was and what its people achieved. The blank space on our historical maps is being filled not with guesses, but with the precise, undeniable geometry of lost cities. This discovery shatters one of our most persistent myths. The Amazon is not, and never was, a virgin forest. The cumulative evidence from LIDAR and archaeology forces a radical rethink. We are not looking at a pristine wilderness untouched by time, but at a vast, ancient garden, carefully managed and shaped by human hands for thousands of years. The iconic biodiversity we see today, the very richness that defines the jungle, may be in part a profound human legacy. This is the revolutionary concept of anthropogenic forests, a term that simply means forest shaped by people. It blurs the line we often draw between nature and culture, suggesting that what we call wilderness is often a built environment, a collaboration between human ingenuity and ecological processes. Think of it this way: for centuries, these societies were not just living in the forest, they were its active gardeners. The LIDAR maps show us the large-scale structures, but the living proof is in the trees themselves. Researchers like Carolina Levis have analyzed the distribution of plant species across the Amazon and found something extraordinary. The most abundant and economically useful trees, species like the Brazil nut, the cacao, the acai palm, and dozens of fruit and timber trees, are not randomly scattered. They are found in higher concentrations around ancient archaeological sites and within those patches of fertile Terra Preta soil. This pattern is not a coincidence. It is a living footprint. Generations of people selectively planted, protected, and dispersed the species that were most valuable for food, medicine, construction, and ritual. They weeded out less useful plants and encouraged the growth of a forest that served human needs while maintaining its overall health and complexity. The jungle we walk through today is in many places an inherited orchard. This turns the old narrative of human impact completely on its head. The conventional story, born from seeing deforestation in our own time, is that human presence equals environmental degradation. But the ancient Amazonians present a different model, one of sophisticated ecological knowledge that enhanced rather than destroyed. Their land use was not extractive but additive. By creating Terra Preta, they permanently enriched the soil's capacity to sustain life. By building raised fields and canals, they increased habitat diversity, supporting more fish, birds, and plants. Their managed landscapes likely created the very ecological mosaic that supports such high biodiversity. They practiced a form of conservation through use, shaping a forest that was both a home and a larder, a temple and a toolkit. This offers a powerful lesson for our modern conservation dilemmas. It suggests that the goal of preserving nature might not mean locking humans out, but rather rediscovering how to integrate sustainable, knowledgeable stewardship back into the equation. It also invites a fascinating contrast with land use in the medieval Old World. During the same centuries that the Casarabe were building their garden cities, Europe was undergoing its own great transformation of the landscape. Massive deforestation was underway to create farmland, pasture, and fuel for growing kingdoms. Forests were often seen as dark, wild places to be cleared and tamed, the domain of outlaws and spirits. The relationship was frequently adversarial, a fight to impose human order on a chaotic natural world. In the Amazon, the relationship was fundamentally symbiotic. There was no concept of wilderness to conquer because humans saw themselves as embedded within a living, conscious network. They didn't clear the forest to make fields. They sculpted the forest into a productive, multi-layered system. One approach sought to replace the natural ecosystem, the other worked to amplify it. This is not to say one was morally superior, but to highlight a profoundly different way of seeing humanity's place in the world. This realization changes everything. It means that when we look at the Amazon, we are not looking at a museum of pure nature. We are looking at a living artifact, a testament to a partnership that lasted for millennia. The green desert was a cultivated paradise. This reframing is not just about the past, it is crucial for the future. It gives agency and deep historical authority to the indigenous communities who have safeguarded these forests against incredible odds. Their knowledge is not just folklore, it is the accumulated science of generations who knew how to make the forest flourish. As we face global ecological challenges, the ancient Amazon whispers a compelling question. What if the path forward isn't about abandoning our role on the planet, but about learning to play it with the same kind of attentive, generative wisdom? The true scale of this discovery only comes into focus when we place it on a global stage. During the very centuries when knights were riding across Europe and great cathedrals were rising from the stone of old towns, an entirely different kind of urban experiment was reaching its zenith beneath the Amazon canopy. Though separated by an ocean, the societies of medieval Europe and the pre-contact Amazon were both solving the same fundamental human puzzle: how to build a complex, thriving civilization within the limits of their environment. Their solutions, however, could not have been more different, and comparing them reveals two profound philosophies of what a city could be. In Europe, the classic medieval city was defined by density and defense. Think of the walled towns of France or Italy, their narrow, winding streets packed tightly within a protective ring of stone. These were places of concentrated power, where the castle, the cathedral, and the market square stood in close proximity, and space was at a premium. They were often built in clearings, on hilltops, or along rivers, but their relationship with the surrounding countryside was frequently one of extraction and separation. The forest was a resource to be managed, a source of timber and game, but also a dark, wild space beyond the safety of the walls. The city stood as a fortress of human order against the chaos of nature. The Amazonian model, as the LIDAR scans reveal, presents a stunning alternative. Here, the city was not a dense fortress, but a sprawling, green network. There were no confining stone walls. Instead, the entire managed landscape was the settlement. Residential mounds were dispersed among orchards and fields, connected by those raised causeways that served not as barriers but as connectors. The monumental architecture was not stone spires but earthen pyramids, built from the very soil beneath their feet, where a European moat was a defensive trench filled with water to keep the world out. An Amazonian canal was part of a life-giving hydraulic system, managing water for transportation, fishing, and farming. One civilization built to separate itself from nature, the other built to weave itself into nature's fabric. This fundamental difference extended to their agricultural hearts. Europe's medieval farmers famously practiced open field farming, clearing vast tracts of forest to create communal plowed fields, a system that could deplete the soil over time. The Amazonians practiced a form of agroforestry, enriching the earth itself with Terra Preta and cultivating a diverse, layered garden that mimicked the forest's own structure. Theirs was not an act of replacement but of enhancement. Even their moments of crisis reveal a shared human vulnerability through different agents of change. Europe was reshaped by the Black Death, a pandemic that swept through its crowded cities and trade routes. The Amazon's collapse was triggered by introduced diseases against which its people had no defense, compounded by climatic shifts. Both events were demographic catastrophes that unraveled social order, but one arose from within a connected old world, while the other was an invisible shock from a world these societies never knew existed. This comparison does not seek to crown one model as superior. Instead, it expands our understanding of human ingenuity. It shows that urbanization is not a single path, but a branching tree of possibilities. The medieval European city, with its walls and spires, gave us one blueprint for communal life. The Amazonian garden city, with its mounds and causeways, gave us another, one that saw the environment not as an adversary to be conquered, but as a partner to be engaged. For centuries, we only had the tools to read one of these blueprints in detail. The stones of Europe endured, telling their story to anyone who would look. The earthworks of the Amazon were silent, their language forgotten. This is why the technology of LIDAR is so transformative. It is the universal translator for these lost landscapes. It gives us, for the first time, the ability to see both experiments in urban living with equal clarity, to appreciate the full, global tapestry of human achievement. We are no longer comparing a detailed stone carving to a faint, forgotten whisper. We are now reading two complete and magnificent texts, written in different languages, but speaking to the same enduring human spirit. But with the power to reveal comes a profound responsibility. This technology that can see through the forest canopy cannot see through the complex human questions it uncovers. Who truly owns this rediscovered history, and how should such a powerful story be shared with the world? For many modern indigenous communities across the Amazon basin, the laser maps do not reveal a lost world, they affirm a living one. The geometric earthworks and ancient roadways visible on a screen are often direct validations of oral histories passed down for generations, stories of ancestral cities and shaped landscapes that academic science had long dismissed as myth. This confirmation can be deeply empowering, a reconnection with a heritage that colonialism and epidemic tried to erase. It provides tangible, scientific evidence to support land rights and cultural sovereignty, proving a continuous, profound relationship with territory that stretches back centuries. Yet, this moment of validation is also fraught with concern. The sudden spotlight on these sites can attract unwanted attention, from looters seeking artifacts to well-meaning but disruptive tourism. There is a real fear that external researchers might extract knowledge and artifacts for academic prestige, only to leave the descendant communities with no benefit and no control over their own ancestral narrative. The history, once buried by the jungle, risks being appropriated all over again. This is why the most ethical and effective path forward is one of partnership. Organizations like the Amazon Conservation Team work on this principle, pairing cutting-edge technology like LIDAR with deep, respectful collaboration with indigenous communities. In these projects, elders and knowledge keepers help interpret the scans, their oral histories providing context that turns anonymous shapes on a map into places with names and meanings. Young community members are trained in archaeological methods, becoming the stewards of their own heritage. This model shifts the goal from mere discovery to reciprocal empowerment. The technology is used not just for academic papers, but as a tool for cultural revitalization, education, and legal defense of ancestral lands. It ensures that the narrative woven from these findings is accurate, nuanced, and one that the descendant communities have a central role in telling. This collaborative approach is also practically essential for working in such a vast and remote environment. Local guides possess irreplaceable knowledge of the terrain, the rivers, and the seasonal rhythms. Their partnership makes fieldwork safer, more efficient, and more respectful of the living forest. It transforms the process from an external expedition into a shared journey of recovery. Ultimately, the ethical use of this revelatory technology asks us to see its purpose not as an end in itself, but as a beginning. It is a means to mend a broken thread of memory, to support resilience, and to ensure that the incredible legacy of the garden cities serves the future of the people whose ancestors built them. This thoughtful, partnership-driven approach to the past is what allows us to look beyond the maps and the mounds, to consider the most profound implication of all. If human societies once thrived here in such sophisticated harmony with their environment, what does that mean for our own relationship with this vital, fragile planet today? Getting those laser pulses into the sky above the Amazon is a monumental logistical puzzle. The technology itself is a marvel of precision, but deploying it in one of the most remote and unforgiving landscapes on Earth is a feat of modern exploration that rivals the ambition of the ancient builders themselves. It begins not with a flight, but with a mountain of planning. Research teams must secure a complex web of permits from national and local governments, often in close consultation with indigenous communities whose territories they hope to survey. This diplomatic groundwork is as crucial as any technical calibration, ensuring the work is respectful, authorized, and collaborative. Then comes the challenge of moving the equipment. A typical airborne LIDAR system is a delicate assembly of lasers, scanners, and inertial measurement units, often requiring a specially outfitted aircraft. Just getting that plane to a suitable airstrip near the survey area can be an adventure, involving flights to remote towns where runways are short and services are basic. From there, every flight is a carefully choreographed dance with the environment. Pilots must fly precise, back and forth grid patterns over the target zone, often for hours at a time, while the LIDAR unit fires its invisible barrage of pulses toward the Earth. They are at the mercy of the Amazon's infamous weather. Sudden tropical storms can ground operations for days, and even on clear days, intense heat and humidity can strain both equipment and crew. The terrain itself presents a unique challenge. Dense, towering canopy can absorb and scatter the laser light, and in areas of particularly thick vegetation, achieving enough ground returns to create a clear map requires incredibly dense pulse rates, flying lower, or multiple passes over the same area. The scale is almost unimaginable. A single survey mission might cover hundreds, even thousands of square kilometers. Each flight generates a torrent of raw data, billions of individual points recording the precise location in three-dimensional space of everything the laser touched, from the highest treetop to the lowest fern on the forest floor. This is where the real work begins. The raw data is not a map, it is a chaotic digital point cloud, a universe of dots. Processing it into a usable form is a months-long endeavor for teams of specialists. Data scientists and software engineers use powerful algorithms to classify these billions of points, separating the noise of the vegetation from the signal of the ground. They filter out the returns from leaves, branches, and vines, a painstaking digital deforestation that slowly reveals the bare earth model. What emerges is a pristine, high-resolution terrain map, but it is still just a landscape of shapes. This is when the archaeologists, ethnographers, and often community partners lean in. Their trained eyes scan the newly revealed contours, looking for the subtle, unnatural geometry that betrays human hands. A long, straight ridge becomes a causeway. A cluster of symmetrical mounds transforms into a plaza. A perfect circle etched into the soil is recognized as a ceremonial earthwork. Each anomaly is flagged, catalogued, and given a preliminary interpretation. This interdisciplinary dialogue is vital, as a feature that might look like a natural hill to a software engineer is immediately recognizable as a platform mound to an archaeologist familiar with the region. The final product, the stunning map that makes headlines, is the result of this immense chain of effort, from diplomatic negotiations and daring flights through tropical skies to countless hours of silent, focused work before computer screens. It is a testament to human curiosity and perseverance, a modern counterpart to the communal labor that once built the very cities they are now discovering. And with each new map finalized, a new door swings open. These digital landscapes are not the end of the story, they are the beginning. They provide the essential blueprint, the master plan that guides the next, most intimate phase of the journey, the return to the ground. The dense jungles of Honduras held a secret that would become a global proof of concept. While outside the Amazon basin, the dramatic LIDAR discovery in the remote Mosquisha region echoed the revelations beginning to surface in South America, demonstrating the technology's transformative power on a world stage. This story centers on the search for a legendary place known as the Lost City of the Monkey God, a rumored metropolis that had tantalized explorers for over a century. The Mosquisha is one of the last true wilderness areas in Central America, a vast, roadless expanse of rainforest so thick and difficult to navigate that even local people rarely ventured into its deepest parts. Previous ground expeditions had found tantalizing hints: stone sculptures, earthen mounds, but the sheer scale and complexity of what was really there remained hidden. It was the perfect place to test whether LIDAR could see what the human eye could not. Archaeologists, including Christopher Fisher from Colorado State University, partnered with documentary filmmakers and technology specialists to conduct an aerial survey. They flew a grid pattern over a targeted valley, their laser scanner firing pulses through the notorious Canopy. When the data was processed and the vegetation digitally stripped away, the team stared in disbelief at their screens. The map revealed not a few scattered ruins, but an extensive urban complex sprawling across the valley floor and up the hillsides. It was a pristine archaeological landscape, untouched by looting, frozen in time. The digital model showed a lost city with a startling level of detail. There were large, open plazas designed for public gathering. There were pyramidal mounds, some nearly 100 feet tall, that once supported temples and elite residences. A network of irrigation canals and reservoirs snaked through the settlement, evidence of sophisticated water management to support a large population. Most strikingly, the scans revealed features that would have been almost impossible to find from the ground, like a cache of stone sculptures left in a ceremonial area, appearing as subtle anomalies in the terrain data. This digital map became a literal treasure map for the ground team. Guided with pinpoint accuracy by the LIDAR coordinates, Fisher and his colleagues could plan their expedition with unprecedented efficiency. Instead of weeks of dangerous, blind hacking through the undergrowth, they knew exactly where to go. They followed the scans directly to the center of plazas, to the bases of specific pyramids, and along the routes of ancient canals. The technology allowed them to confirm the city's scale and layout in a fraction of the time a traditional survey would have taken, minimizing their impact on the fragile environment. The Honduran discovery was a watershed moment for global archaeology. It made international headlines, capturing the public imagination with the romantic idea of a lost city found. More importantly for science, it provided irrefutable visual proof that LIDAR worked in the most challenging tropical environments. It demonstrated that the method was not just a theoretical tool, but a practical one that could deliver immediate, groundbreaking results. This single case study did more than rewrite the history of the Mosquisha. It unlocked a wave of interest and funding. It showed granting agencies and research institutions the tangible value of investing in this expensive technology. The success story from Honduras directly fueled confidence and support for the larger, continent-wide surveys just beginning in the Amazon basin. It proved that a single flyover could indeed rewrite the history of an entire region, turning myth into mapped reality. The lesson was clear. If a city of this scale could remain hidden in Honduras, what vastly larger networks might be waiting, unseen, beneath the even vaster canopy of the Amazon? The hunt was officially on, and the map of the ancient Americas was about to be redrawn on an unimaginable scale. The shimmering digital landscape on the computer screen is a map of ghosts. Those billions of precise points stripped of their green canopy reveal a breathtaking terrain of hills, valleys, and subtle ridges, but the raw data does not speak for itself. It whispers in a language of shapes and shadows, and translating those whispers into a coherent historical narrative is where the real detective work begins. This is the painstaking, collaborative art of interpretation, turning a cloud of numbers into the story of a people. The first and most critical task is to separate the signal from the noise, to distinguish what was built by human hands from what was shaped by wind, water, and time. An algorithm might flag a long, straight ridge as a potential causeway, but is it, or is it a natural geological feature, a remnant of an ancient riverbank or a seismic fold? To answer that, the archaeologist must become a forensic ecologist. They draw on deep knowledge of local soil types, knowing that a constructed causeway will often have a distinct composition, layers of compacted clay and cultural material unlike the surrounding natural soil. They examine the context. Does this straight ridge connect logically to other features, like a cluster of mounds or a plaza? Does it align with the patterns seen at other confirmed sites? A single, isolated line might be nature, but a line that forms part of a geometric network is almost certainly culture. This interpretive dance happens feature by feature. That cluster of small, rounded mounds on the screen could be a neighborhood of house platforms, but could they also be termite mounds? The analyst zooms in, studying the spatial patterning. Termite mounds often distribute randomly, following resources in the soil. House platforms, however, tend to show social organization, arranged in rows around courtyards or along the edges of plazas. Their size and grouping might even hint at social stratification, with larger platforms for elite families positioned closer to the ceremonial center. Every anomaly is a question. A wide, shallow depression near a water source might be a reservoir for dry season irrigation, but it could also be a natural sinkhole. The key often lies in the details of its form. A human-engineered reservoir will frequently show signs of intentional shaping, with straight edges, connecting channels, or a consistent depth, unlike the irregular contours of a natural formation. This process is profoundly collaborative. A data scientist might excel at filtering the point cloud, but it is the archaeologist, often working with indigenous community partners, who brings the cultural framework to understand what they are seeing. An elder's oral history might describe ancestral fish weirs in a certain bend of a river, guiding the team to look for specific linear patterns in the LIDAR data along that very bank. A botanist's knowledge of useful tree species can help explain why certain areas show less dense vegetation in the scans, hinting at ancient orchards or managed groves whose legacy trees still stand today. Each specialist adds a layer of understanding, transforming anonymous pixels into a lived-in world. The ultimate goal is to move from identifying structures to reconstructing society. By mapping the relationships between features, a narrative emerges. The concentration of large ceremonial mounds near extensive raised field systems suggests a theocratic leadership that controlled both spiritual life and agricultural surplus. The strategic placement of defensive ditches around some settlements, but not others, speaks of alliances and tensions between communities. The sheer volume of moved earth for the pyramids implies a level of social organization capable of mobilizing and sustaining a large labor force, likely through a combination of shared belief, obligation, and communal benefit. This civilization left no written codices or stone inscriptions. Their archive is the landscape itself. Every causeway is a sentence about connectivity and engineering. Every mound is a paragraph about social hierarchy and collective labor. Every reservoir and canal is a chapter on environmental adaptation and foresight. Interpreting the LIDAR data is the meticulous work of learning to read this vast, silent text, written not in ink, but in soil and intention. It is how we begin to hear the echoes of market days in a plaza, of processions along a sacred road, of generations tending the dark earth of their gardens. And as this picture of daily life comes into focus, it inevitably leads us to wonder about the minds behind the mounds, to the beliefs that gave such profound meaning to their world of earth and sky. These intricate urban blueprints were not built for a handful of villagers. The sheer scale of the earthworks, the miles of causeways, and the vast agricultural grids point toward a fundamental question that has ignited intense debate among scholars. Just how many people called this garden metropolis home? For generations, the answer was assumed to be very few. The old model of the pristine wilderness logically supported only tiny, scattered populations. But the new evidence from the ground and the sky demands a complete recalculation. Researchers now use the physical footprints of these societies to make educated estimates. They analyze the staggering extent of the raised fields visible in LIDAR scans, calculating how many tons of manioc or maize such a system could produce annually. They map the density of residential mounds across a surveyed region, estimating how many families might have lived in each cluster. They build sophisticated carrying capacity models that factor in the supercharged fertility of Terra Preta plots. When all these lines of evidence converge, the numbers that emerge are staggering. In certain regions of the Amazon, like the areas now being mapped in Bolivia and Brazil, pre-contact populations may have reached into the hundreds of thousands, even millions. This is not a fringe idea. Scholars like Charles Mann, in his groundbreaking book 1491, brought these revised estimates to a wide audience, painting a picture of the Americas as a crowded, managed hemisphere. This recalibration is more than an academic adjustment. It is a demographic earthquake. It transforms the map of the pre-Columbian world from a mostly empty land to one teeming with human life and activity. If these estimates are even close to accurate, the consequence is a historical tragedy of almost incomprehensible scale. It implies that the population collapse following European contact was not just severe but apocalyptic. The loss of life from introduced diseases compounded by social upheaval may have been so vast that it emptied a continent. This catastrophic depopulation had a direct and chilling effect on the landscape itself. With the gardeners gone, the forests they had tended for millennia began to change. Orchards went untended, managed groves grew wild, and the careful mosaic of fields and forest slowly homogenized into the seemingly untamed wilderness that Europeans later encountered and mistakenly called primeval. The empty green ocean observed by early explorers was not a natural state, but a silent monument to a recent and profound loss. This realization reshapes our understanding of the Columbian exchange, the great transfer of plants, animals, and diseases between the old and new worlds. The impact was not just a one-way street of crops like potatoes and maize flowing to Europe. It was also a demographic and ecological cataclysm in the Americas, one so deep that it may have even altered the global climate, as vast tracts of previously managed land reforested rapidly, pulling carbon from the atmosphere. To stand in the Amazon today, then, is to stand in a landscape of profound absence. The vibrant hum of those ancient cities is gone, replaced by the cicada's drone and the monkey's call. Yet the earth remembers. Every mound, every line of dark soil, every cluster of Brazil nut trees is a testament to the multitudes that were here, shaping their world with a wisdom we are only now beginning to measure. The genius of these cities was written in water. Every aspect of their design, from the height of a home to the curve of a canal, was a thoughtful response to the Amazon's relentless, life-giving pulse. This was not a civilization that fought against its environment, but one that learned its language fluently. The defining feature of the basin is its rhythm, the dramatic seasonal flooding known as the flood pulse. For months each year, vast areas transform from solid ground into shallow inland seas, a cycle that would seem to forbid permanent settlement. Yet the ancient engineers saw not an obstacle, but an opportunity. They built their entire urban concept around this aquatic reality. The raised residential mounds were islands of dry living during the wet season. The sprawling networks of causeways functioned as elevated roadways, keeping travel and trade flowing when the land was submerged. Most ingenious were the hydraulic systems. Canals were not just for transportation, they were part of a managed aquatic landscape. They directed floodwaters, drained fields, and created perfect habitats for fish and turtles, turning the seasonal deluge into a harvestable resource. This was climate adaptation on a civic scale, a master plan that harnessed the environment's power rather than resisting it. To understand the full conversation between these societies and their world, scientists look beyond the ruins to nature's own archives. Paleoclimatologists drill deep cores from ancient lake beds and analyze the layers of sediment, each stratum a page in a diary of ancient weather. They study pollen grains preserved for centuries, which reveal what plants were dominant in different eras. They even examine ice cores from distant Andean glaciers, which trap atmospheric evidence that drifted from the forest below. This data paints a picture of the climatic stage upon which these urban dramas played out. What emerges is a story of remarkable stability during their peak. For centuries, the climate cooperated with a predictable rhythm of rains and floods, allowing the sophisticated water management systems to function perfectly. This long period of environmental harmony likely provided the security needed for populations to grow, for labor to be organized, and for the grandest earthworks to be conceived. The cities expanded in dialogue with a dependable world, but the paleoclimate record also holds whispers of crisis. Researchers have identified evidence of severe, multi-decade droughts that struck parts of the Amazon around the time of European contact and possibly earlier. For a civilization built on the reliable presence of water, a prolonged drought would have been catastrophic. Reservoirs and canals would have run dry. The carefully balanced raised field agriculture dependent on seasonal moisture would have failed. The fish that supplemented their diet would have vanished from parched waterways. Such an environmental shock would have placed unbearable stress on the social and economic fabric. It could have sparked conflicts over dwindling resources, forced painful migrations, and shattered the faith in the systems that had sustained them for generations. This climatic data suggests that the collapse of these garden cities may not have had a single cause, but was rather a tragic convergence. A society already potentially strained by internal pressures or shifting trade networks could have been pushed past its breaking point by a prolonged drought. Then, just as they were most vulnerable, the invisible storm of introduced diseases arrived. The synergy of environmental stress and demographic catastrophe would have been devastating. This interpretation offers a humbling lesson about resilience. It shows that even the most brilliantly adapted societies exist in a delicate balance with their world. Their sustainable model was not a magic shield, but a resilient system that worked beautifully within a certain range of conditions. When those conditions shifted too far and were compounded by an unimaginable external shock, the system unraveled. Their legacy, therefore, is not one of failure, but of profound success within ecological boundaries. For centuries, they demonstrated that a high degree of social complexity could flourish without destroying the forest that supported it. They achieved what we now strive for, a sustainable urban existence. Their story ends not with a judgment, but with a poignant question about our own relationship with a changing climate, and a reminder that the greatest civilizations are those that listen most closely to the world around them. A straight causeway is more than a road, it is a conversation. The laser-revealed highways connecting these garden cities were not built in isolation. They were the physical threads of a vast, humming network of exchange, tying distant communities into a single, resilient socio-economic fabric. These societies did not live as lonely islands in a green sea. They were part of a connected, dynamic world, where goods, ideas, and people flowed across the landscape with a sophistication that rewrites our understanding of ancient commerce. The very design of their infrastructure tells this story. Those raised causeways did not just link a town to its local fields. They often stretched for dozens of miles in remarkably straight lines, pointing like arrows toward other population centers or critical resource areas. Similarly, the rivers were not just sources of water and fish. They were liquid highways. Canoes, hollowed from massive rainforest trees, could carry immense cargoes of goods upstream and down, connecting the remote interior with the Andean highlands and the Atlantic coast. This combination of terrestrial and aquatic routes created a web of possibility. Imagine a trader from a mound city in the Bolivian savanna. His journey might begin by walking a smooth, dry causeway during the wet season, carrying a load of finely painted ceramics or bundles of vibrant parrot feathers. He reaches a major river where he loads his goods into a canoe. For weeks, he paddles downstream, eventually meeting traders from the foothills who have brought down precious obsidian for razor-sharp tools or seeds for rare medicinal plants. They barter, exchange news, and perhaps arrange a marriage alliance between their communities before turning back to carry these exotic items home. The inventory of this ancient Amazonian marketplace was rich and varied. Beyond the durable ceramics and stone tools that survive in the archaeological record, the trade would have dealt in perishable treasures that have long since vanished. There were brilliantly colored feathers from macaws and parrots, used for ceremonial headdresses and status symbols. There were rare seeds, cuttings for fruit trees, and potent jungle medicines. There was likely salt, a vital mineral for health, traded from coastal areas or certain inland springs. And there was almost certainly cacao, the source of chocolate, highly prized for both its stimulating drink and its ritual significance. This flow of material goods was inseparable from the flow of knowledge. With every obsidian blade from the mountains came an understanding of new quarrying techniques. With every new pottery style arrived artistic influences and perhaps spiritual motifs. A seed for a better yielding crop variety was a packet of agricultural innovation. This constant, low-level exchange meant that technological and cultural breakthroughs could diffuse across thousands of square miles, allowing societies to adapt and improve without having to invent everything themselves. The LIDAR scans themselves provide subtle clues to this economic complexity. Researchers look for signs of craft specialization. Are there areas within a settlement, perhaps near certain mounds, that show evidence of concentrated activity, like piles of ceramic shards or specific tool debris? This could indicate dedicated workshops where skilled artisans produced surplus goods for trade. Even more telling would be evidence of standardized goods. If ceramics from a wide area share very specific shapes, sizes, and decorative patterns, it suggests not just cultural connection, but possibly a form of organized production, where certain centers manufactured goods for distribution across a region. This level of economic integration implies a staggering degree of social and political coordination. Maintaining long-distance trade routes requires a degree of safety and protocol. It suggests that relationships between different chiefdoms or polities were often structured through formal alliances, perhaps sealed by the exchange of gifts or intermarriage among elites. Trade was not just commerce, it was diplomacy. It created bonds of mutual dependence that could help buffer against local crop failures or conflicts, making the entire network more resilient. The picture that emerges is of a continent already globally connected. Long before the word global had any meaning here, the Amazon was not a passive recipient of history, but an active participant, a crucible of innovation and exchange that operated on a continental scale. This interconnected world of flowing goods and ideas stands in quiet rebuke to the old myth of small, isolated tribes. It reveals a pulsating, interactive civilization whose economic heartbeat echoed from the Andes to the Atlantic. The geometry of peace was only one side of the story. While the LIDAR maps reveal a civilization in harmony with its environment, they also unveil a landscape prepared for a darker, more familiar human reality. Etched into the digital terrain alongside the serene plazas and causeways are the unmistakable blueprints of defense. Deep, wide ditches encircle entire settlements, their sharp angles contrasting with the soft curves of natural rivers. Clear lines of what were once wooden palisades, now visible as subtle ridges, trace defensive perimeters. Strategic placement speaks volumes, with many communities situated on high bluffs or on islands surrounded by protective rings of water or marsh. This was not a world free from threat. The evidence points to societies that understood the need for protection, planning their cities with security in mind. The scale of these fortifications dismantles an old and persistent myth, the idea of the peaceful, noble savage living in unchanging tranquility. Constructing miles of defensive earthworks and maintaining standing palisades requires immense coordinated effort, a communal investment that would only be made against a perceived and serious danger. This suggests organized conflict was a part of life, whether in the form of raids between rival communities or larger-scale warfare over vital resources. In a landscape carefully managed for abundance, what was worth fighting for, the motives would have been deeply human and familiar. Control over the richest Terra Preta farmlands or access to prime fishing grounds along a river could spark competition. Disputes over territory, trade route access, or even matters of prestige and honor between powerful leaders could escalate. The presence of these defenses indicates these societies navigated a complex web of alliances and rivalries, where periods of trade and cultural exchange could be punctuated by tension or violence. This layer of complexity brings them into a sharper, more relatable historical focus. Their story is no longer a simplistic parable of ecological harmony, but a richer narrative of a people grappling with the full spectrum of human experience. They faced the dual challenges of mastering a demanding environment and managing the equally demanding dynamics of human society. In this, they mirrored their contemporaries across the ocean. Just as a medieval European lord would build a castle on a hill to control the surrounding countryside, an Amazonian chief would fortify his settlement on a bluff, overseeing the causeways and fields below. The raised mound, while a sacred temple, also functioned as a watchtower. The ditch that drained water during the flood season could also slow an advancing force. Their innovations served multiple purposes, blending the practical needs of daily life and spiritual practice with the sober realities of security. This evidence does not diminish their achievements, it deepens them. It shows that their sustainability was not born from a state of naive peace, but was a hard-won equilibrium, maintained amidst the same pressures of competition and conflict that have shaped human communities everywhere. Their capacity for organized cooperation, so vividly displayed in their earthworks and agriculture, also extended to organized defense. This complete picture reminds us that social complexity is a package deal, encompassing the brilliance to cultivate a garden city and the sober understanding that such a valuable creation might need to be protected. The silent ditches and vanished palisades stand as a testament not to a fall from grace, but to a clear-eyed engagement with the world as it was, a world of both abundance and risk, where building a community meant being prepared to defend it. The ghostly maps we have now are merely the first, low-resolution sketches of a lost world. The current LIDAR discoveries, as breathtaking as they are, represent only a tiny fraction of what is waiting to be found. The true revolution in Amazonian archaeology is not behind us, it is just beginning, and the tools for this next great exploration are evolving at a staggering pace. Future surveys will not just cover more territory, they will see with far greater clarity. Higher resolution lasers will peer through denser canopy, revealing not only the grand ceremonial mounds but the subtle footprints of everyday life. We will begin to map individual homesteads, the intricate patterns of small garden plots, and the faint trails that connected families to their neighbors. This finer lens will allow us to understand the complete social fabric, from the largest plaza to the most humble dwelling, painting a full-color portrait of a society where we currently have only an outline. The sheer volume of data from these future missions presents its own magnificent challenge. A single large-scale survey can generate billions of data points, a digital universe too vast for any single researcher to analyze by eye. This is where a powerful new partner enters the story: artificial intelligence. Scientists are now training machine learning algorithms to become expert archaeological detectives. These AI systems are fed thousands of examples of known features, causeways, mounds, canals, and learn to recognize their distinctive signatures in new LIDAR data. What once took a team months of painstaking visual analysis can soon be accomplished in a matter of days or even hours. The AI acts as a tireless assistant, flagging potential sites for human experts to then interpret and explore. This partnership between human intuition and machine precision will accelerate discovery at an exponential rate, turning a slow trickle of findings into a steady flow. The frontiers of exploration are also expanding beyond the aerial view. Researchers are developing portable, ground-based LIDAR systems that can be carried into a site on a backpack. These devices create hyper-detailed, three-dimensional models of individual structures, capturing every contour of a pottery shard or the precise angle of a terrace wall. This allows for virtual preservation and study at a level of detail previously unimaginable. Perhaps the most tantalizing frontier lies beneath the water. The Amazon's rivers were the lifeblood of these civilizations, and many settlements were built directly on their banks, now submerged by centuries of silt and shifting water levels. The next technological leap may be underwater LIDAR, capable of mapping these drowned landscapes and revealing cities that slipped beneath the waves, perfectly preserved in their riverine tombs. The coming decades promise a deluge of new knowledge. Each flyover, each algorithmic scan, each dive into a murky river will add another piece to the puzzle. This flood of data will not simply add more dots to the map. It will force us to constantly redraw the lines connecting them. Our understanding of population density, trade networks, social organization, and even the timeline of rise and collapse will be refined, challenged, and rewritten. We are on the cusp of moving from discovering individual sites to comprehending an entire civilization in motion, in all its regional variety and historical depth. The silent cities of the Amazon are finally beginning to speak, and we have only just learned how to listen. This ancient partnership between people and the forest offers more than just history, it offers a roadmap. The discovery that the Amazon is a profound historical artifact, a garden built over millennia, forces a complete rethinking of modern conservation and land use. For decades, the dominant model for saving the rainforest has often been one of exclusion, based on that old myth of pristine wilderness. The goal was to create protected areas where human activity was minimized or banned, to let nature exist apart from us. But the laser maps and the dark earth tell a different story, one where humans were not the enemy of biodiversity, but its keystone architects. These societies functioned as a keystone species, a vital part of the ecosystem whose active, knowledgeable management actually increased the variety and resilience of life around them. By planting diverse orchards, enriching soils, and creating a mosaic of habitats, they enhanced the forest's complexity. This evidence powerfully validates a different path forward, indigenous-led conservation. It proves that the communities living in the Amazon today are not newcomers threatening a virgin landscape. They are the inheritors and modern practitioners of a deep, historical profession as landscape architects. Their traditional knowledge about plants, animals, and fire management is not anecdotal folklore. It is the accumulated science of generations who successfully shaped a continent. Supporting their land rights and sovereignty is not just a social justice issue. It is arguably the most effective conservation strategy available because it aligns with the very processes that created the biodiverse forest we cherish. This historical insight casts our current crisis in an even starker, more tragic light. When we see bulldozers clearing land today, we are not merely watching the destruction of a natural ecosystem. We are witnessing the erasure of a priceless cultural heritage, a living library of human ingenuity. Each acre lost is a chapter torn from a book we have only just begun to read, a unique model of sustainable living that flourished for centuries. It raises an urgent question: are we, in our pursuit of short-term gain, obliterating one of humanity's greatest demonstrations of how to live well within ecological limits? The ancient cities show us that a thriving human presence and a thriving forest are not mutually exclusive. They can be, and were for a very long time, one and the same. This legacy provides a compelling, hopeful argument for protection. We are not just saving trees for the sake of trees. We are safeguarding a monument to human potential, a testament to what is possible when we see ourselves not as separate from nature, but as thoughtful, creative participants within it. The choice before us is clear. Will we continue the path that leads to silent ruins, or will we learn from the gardeners of the past and begin to cultivate a future worthy of their legacy? The story of the garden cities has leaped from academic journals onto the world stage. Headlines proclaim lost civilizations found, and documentaries beam laser revealed landscapes into living rooms across the globe. This surge of public fascination is a powerful force. It translates into crucial funding for further research, inspiring a new generation of archaeologists and raising awareness about the Amazon's profound historical depth. Yet, this bright spotlight carries a shadow. The very drama that captivates us can sometimes tempt storytellers toward sensationalism, framing these places as mere treasure troves of gold or focusing on mythical curses rather than the true treasure, which is the knowledge itself. This risks reviving a colonial treasure hunter mentality, where the value of a site is measured in artifacts removed, not in stories understood or communities empowered. The challenge, then, is to share the wonder without losing the truth. The answer lies in responsible and immersive science communication. Instead of relying on speculation, researchers and media makers are now using the precise LIDAR data to build stunningly accurate three-dimensional visualizations. We can now take a virtual walk along a causeway that has been buried for centuries, or stand in a digital plaza and look up at the silhouette of an earthen pyramid against a simulated sky. Virtual reality reconstructions allow anyone, anywhere, to experience these spaces, fostering a direct, emotional connection to the past that a textbook paragraph never could. Most importantly, this new storytelling is increasingly collaborative. Documentaries and exhibitions now foreground indigenous voices, weaving oral histories with archaeological data to create a narrative that is both scientifically rigorous and culturally authentic. This approach does more than inform. It transforms the public from passive consumers of mystery into active participants in an ongoing discovery. By making these invisible cities visible through ethical and awe-inspiring means, we are not just reporting on history, we are inviting everyone to witness a fundamental rewriting of the human story. It fosters a powerful sense of shared global heritage, reminding us that the roots of ingenuity and resilience run deep in soils all across our world. But with every groundbreaking map, a new conversation begins. The stunning images from the sky have ignited passionate debates among the very scholars piecing this history together. This is not a sign of weakness, but of a healthy, vibrant science wrestling with a story that keeps growing more complex. One central debate revolves around the very words we use to describe these places. When we see a network of mounds and causeways spanning hundreds of square kilometers, is it accurate to call it a city? For many archaeologists, the term fits, as it conveys a level of social complexity, economic integration, and planned infrastructure that feels fundamentally urban. Others, however, urge caution. They point out that our idea of a city is often shaped by old-world models, dense, walled, and built of stone. What the LIDAR reveals is something profoundly different, a low-density green alternative. Some researchers prefer terms like garden city or cultivated landscape to emphasize this unique blend of urban planning and ecological management. They argue that using our familiar vocabulary might accidentally force these societies into a box they never belonged in, obscuring the very innovation we are trying to understand. This is more than semantics. It is a struggle to find language worthy of a newly discovered world. Alongside the debate over labels is a careful scrutiny of numbers. The estimates of vast pre-contact populations are compelling, but some scholars advise a measured approach. They highlight the gaps in our data. While LIDAR shows us the footprints of structures, it cannot tell us if every residential mound was occupied simultaneously for centuries. Settlement patterns might have shifted over time, with people moving between sites. The goal is not to dismiss the scale of these societies, but to refine it, to move from a breathtaking headline number to a nuanced understanding of how populations ebbed and flowed across this managed landscape. This push and pull ensures the final narrative is built on rock-solid evidence, not just exciting possibility. Another vital discussion focuses on ethics and perspective. The laser's eye is naturally drawn to the monumental, the biggest pyramids, the longest causeways. But does this technological focus risk creating a history only of elites and engineers? Researchers are actively working to use higher resolution scans and ground surveys to peer into the spaces between the grand mounds to find the subtle traces of everyday life. Where were the workshops for the potters? Where did the farmers who tended the raised fields live? The challenge is to ensure the story of the garden cities includes not just the rulers who commissioned the earthworks, but the countless hands that built them and the families that made them home. Furthermore, the power of this data brings responsibility. Who should have access to the detailed maps of ancestral sites? How can research publications and media stories ensure that indigenous communities are not just subjects of study, but essential partners in interpretation and storytelling? These conversations are quietly reshaping how archaeology is done, prioritizing collaboration and respect alongside discovery. These debates are not a flaw in the process, they are the process. They are the sound of a scientific paradigm stretching to accommodate a new reality. Every critique, every alternative interpretation, acts like a polishing cloth on a lens, gradually bringing the lost world into ever sharper focus. The controversies ensure that the final picture is not a simple fantasy of lost cities, but a rich, textured, and rigorously tested portrait of a human achievement. And as this portrait becomes clearer, it invites us to look beyond the science and the debate, to consider the most human element of all: the individuals, the families, the dreams, and the daily rhythms that once filled these now silent spaces. The digital map is a silent witness, but it takes a human heart to hear its story. Behind every groundbreaking headline about lost cities are the quiet, determined individuals who have dedicated their lives to listening. These are the archaeologists, the local guides, the pilots, and the community partners whose personal journeys of curiosity transform raw data into living history. Their work is a testament not just to technological power, but to profound human perseverance. Take Professor Jose Iriart, a leading figure in Amazonian archaeology. He has spent decades walking the forest floor, his boots caked in mud, searching for the subtle clues others had missed. He recalls the heart-stopping moment when his team first processed the LIDAR data from a site in the Colombian Amazon. For years, they had theorized about a major settlement in the area, based on fragments of pottery and enigmatic earthworks. But staring at the newly revealed digital landscape was an experience of pure awe. Where there had been only green monotony on satellite images, the screen now displayed a sprawling urban network of mounds, plazas, and causeways, laid out with geometric precision. It was, he described, like watching a ghost rise from the earth, a confirmation of a lifetime of hypotheses in a single, breathtaking image. That moment of discovery was not the end of the journey, but a new beginning, a map that would guide years of careful ground verification and partnership with local communities. Equally vital are the local guides and indigenous experts, whose knowledge is the true key to unlocking these landscapes. For an outsider, the rainforest can be a disorienting labyrinth of green. But for those who have lived within it for generations, every bend in the river, every specific tree species tells a story. A guide might point to a seemingly ordinary grove of Brazil nut trees and explain that their ancestors planted them there, that this is an old garden site. They can navigate to a specific bend in a river where fish are plentiful, a place that oral history says was managed with ancient weirs. This deep, place-based knowledge is an invaluable layer of data that no laser can provide. It turns anonymous coordinates on a grid into places with meaning, with names, and with a continuous human story. The collaboration between outside scientists and local experts is a powerful fusion of technological vision and ancestral memory, each side respecting and learning from the other to build a more complete truth. This work is far from a comfortable office job. It is a physical and logistical marathon fraught with challenges that test the limits of dedication. Field seasons are planned around brutal weather, navigating a narrow window between flooding rains and searing heat. Teams must haul delicate equipment through roadless wilderness, often traveling for days by boat and on foot to reach a survey area. Once on site, the environment itself is a constant adversary. Researchers contend with venomous snakes, swarms of relentless insects, and the very real risk of tropical illnesses. Every step through the dense undergrowth is a struggle, and every clearing is a hard-won victory. The remoteness means there is no quick rescue, no nearby hospital. Team members must be entirely self-sufficient, carrying their own supplies and relying on each other for safety. Beyond the natural world, there are human challenges, from navigating complex local politics to ensuring their presence benefits and does not disrupt the communities living near the sites. This is archaeology at its most raw and adventurous, a pursuit driven by a passion so strong it outweighs the discomfort, the danger, and the months spent away from home. These personal stories are the soul of the science. They remind us that archaeology is not a sterile process of machines and algorithms. It is a profoundly human endeavor, fueled by a deep-seated curiosity about who we are and where we come from. It is about the graduate student who spends hours meticulously cleaning a single pottery shard, feeling a connection to the hands that shaped it centuries ago. It is about the pilot who carefully flies a precise grid over uncharted canopy, knowing they might be the first person to see a hidden city in thousands of years. It is the shared excitement in a camp at the end of a long day, when a local guide's story perfectly explains a strange feature on the LIDAR map. This work is a bridge across time, built not of stone or soil, but of shared wonder and relentless questioning. The thrill of discovery is not just in the grand announcement, but in those quiet, personal moments of connection, the moment a pattern emerges from the data, the moment an elder's story is validated by a scan, the moment you stand on a mound and realize you are seeing the world through the eyes of its builders. This human element, this tapestry of passion and partnership, is what gives the lost cities their true voice, allowing them to speak not just of what was built, but of the enduring spirit that built it. Their legacy is a blueprint for a future we desperately need to build. For over 1,000 years, the garden cities of the Amazon achieved something modern society struggles to imagine: a thriving, complex civilization that lived within its ecological means. This was not a story of mere survival, but of active enrichment. They did not extract from their world until it was exhausted. They invested in it generation after generation, creating a system of breathtaking resilience. Their most profound lesson is that sustainability is not a limitation, but a foundation for enduring abundance. Look at their agricultural model. They did not practice monoculture, clearing vast swaths of forest to plant a single crop. Instead, they practiced agroforestry, a layered, intelligent approach that mimicked the forest itself. They planted fruit trees, medicinal shrubs, and root crops together in symbiotic gardens. This diversity was their security. If one crop failed, others would thrive. It prevented soil depletion, minimized pests, and created a continuous harvest throughout the year. This is a stark contrast to modern industrial agriculture, which often relies on simplifying ecosystems, making them fragile and dependent on constant external inputs. The ancient Amazonians understood that complexity equals stability. Their most famous innovation, Terra Preta, is a testament to this philosophy of addition. They did not just take nutrients from the soil, they put more back in. By transforming waste charcoal, broken pottery, food scraps into a permanent soil amendment, they performed a kind of alchemy. They turned poor, acidic earth into a self-regenerating resource that remains fertile centuries later. This is a powerful rebuke to the linear model of take, use, and discard that dominates our current economy. It shows a circular mindset where waste does not exist, only materials waiting to be transformed. Their entire settlement pattern was an exercise in resilience. By designing their cities around the flood pulse, not against it, they turned a potential disaster into an annual engine of renewal. The seasonal floods brought nutrients to their fields, replenished their fish stocks, and flushed their canals. Their raised homes and causeways allowed life to continue uninterrupted. They adapted to the rhythm of their world, rather than trying to force the world to adapt to a rigid, vulnerable blueprint. In our era of climate crisis, where rising seas and extreme weather challenge our static infrastructure, this flexibility is a crucial insight. It teaches us that resilience is not about building bigger walls, but about designing systems that can bend without breaking, that can absorb shock and even benefit from change. So, what does this mean for us today? It proves a vital, hopeful point. High population density and advanced culture do not have to lead to ecological ruin. For too long, we have accepted a false choice between human progress and environmental health. The Amazonians show us a third path, one where human ingenuity is directed toward nurturing the living systems that support us. Their model suggests that our goal should not be to minimize our footprint, but to make it a generative one. Imagine applying their principles to modern urban planning. Cities could be designed as productive ecosystems with green spaces that provide food, manage stormwater, and enrich biodiversity, much like their garden cities. Agriculture could move away from soil-depleting monocultures and toward regenerative agroforestry systems that build soil health and sequester carbon. We could embrace circular economies where waste is systematically repurposed, mirroring the creation of Terra Preta. This is not about rejecting technology, but about redirecting it. We have tools and knowledge they never did. The challenge is to match our technological power with their deep, long-term wisdom. Their story is an invitation to humility and innovation. It asks us to look beyond the short-term gains that drive so much of our decision-making and consider the legacy we are building in the soil. They thought in centuries, not quarterly reports. They understood that the true wealth of a society is not stored in temples of gold, but in the living fertility of the land and the health of the forests that sustain it. In the silent language of their mounds and dark earth, they left a message for the future. A civilization can flourish by becoming a keystone species, by giving more than it takes. The question is no longer whether such a world is possible. The laser maps show us that it was for a glorious millennium. The only question left is whether we have the wisdom to learn from the gardeners of the deep past and begin cultivating that future for ourselves. The world has always been far larger than our history books allowed. For centuries, the grand narrative of human civilization was told as a story with a single stage, centered on the Mediterranean, the valleys of Mesopotamia, and the dynasties of Asia. The Americas, when they appeared, were often a late and tragic footnote, a blank space suddenly filled by European arrival. But the laser maps from the Amazon demand a fundamental rewrite. It is time to place these garden cities on the global stage, to see them not as isolated curiosities, but as central players in a much richer, multipolar world history. Consider a single moment in time around the year 1200. In Europe, masons are laying the stones of Chartres Cathedral, its soaring Gothic arches aiming for heaven. In Cambodia, the vast temple complex of Angkor Wat, a hydraulic city designed around sacred reservoirs, is at its peak. In West Africa, the Empire of Mali is growing wealthy from the gold and salt trades, its great city of Timbuktu becoming a center of Islamic scholarship. And beneath the canopy of South America, the Casarabe civilization is reaching its zenith. Their engineers are sculpting causeways and pyramids from earth. Their farmers are harvesting from vast networks of raised fields, and their societies are thriving in a complex, green, alternative metropolis. These were not primitive societies lagging behind an old-world timeline. They were sophisticated contemporaries, solving the same universal human puzzles: how to organize large populations, how to produce surplus food, how to express power and belief, but they were doing so with completely different answers. This global perspective corrects a profound and long-standing bias. The traditional, Eurocentric view of history often used a very specific checklist for civilization: written language, monumental architecture in stone, centralized empires with standing armies, and the use of the wheel and metal tools. Societies that did not check these specific boxes were frequently dismissed as less advanced or worse as people without history. This lens was not just inaccurate, it was blinding. It made the incredible achievements of the Amazon invisible because they expressed their complexity in a different language. Their monument was the shaped landscape itself, not a carved stone stele. Their archive was the living forest, not a parchment codex. Their power was demonstrated through the collective labor of moving earth and enriching soil, not through conquests recorded by scribes. By holding them to an old-world checklist, we were failing to see the exam they had designed and aced on their own terms. Now we can finally see the full tapestry. The pre-Columbian Americas were not a quiet backwater. They were a hemisphere buzzing with innovation and interaction. To the north, the great city of Cahokia, with its enormous earthen mounds, dominated the Mississippi Valley. In Mesoamerica, the Maya were perfecting astronomy and mathematics in their jungle cities, while the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan was a marvel of hydraulic engineering built on a lake. Along the Andes, the Inca were mastering statecraft and road building on a continental scale. And now we must add to this list the vast, low-density urban networks of the Amazon. This was a connected world of ideas and exchange. While direct contact between the Amazon and the Andes is still being studied, we know that goods like cacao, feathers, and ideas traveled enormous distances. Each of these civilizations represents a unique experiment in what it means to build a complex society, each brilliantly adapted to its specific ecological niche. This rebalancing does more than just add new dots to a map. It fundamentally enriches our understanding of the human experience as a whole. It shows us that there is no single pathway to social complexity, no mandatory blueprint for what a city or a civilization must look like. Humanity's story is one of stunning diversity and adaptive genius. In the deserts, people built with stone and managed scarce water. On the steppes, they built with mobility and herds. In the rainforest, they built with soil and living trees. Each model contains wisdom. The Amazonian model, with its emphasis on sustainable abundance and integration rather than domination, offers a particularly resonant lesson for our own planetary moment. By finally acknowledging the scale and sophistication of these lost garden cities, we do more than correct the historical record. We expand the library of human possibility, discovering in the soil of the past new ideas that might just help us cultivate a better future. The true discovery is not a city, but a new origin story for the Americas. The LIDAR scans have done more than reveal lost cities. They have unveiled an entirely new chapter in the human epic, one written not in stone, but in soil and shadow. For too long, our historical imagination ended at the ocean's edge, framing the Amazon as a passive green backdrop. We now know it was a vibrant stage, a cradle of sophisticated civilization that mastered its environment with a wisdom we are only beginning to comprehend. This is a paradigm shift as profound as any in science, forcing us to redraw the map of human achievement and recognize the ingenuity that flourished in the heart of the jungle. These revelations shatter more than just the myth of the empty wilderness. They dismantle a deeper, more insidious bias. They challenge the very hierarchy we have used to measure civilizations. By proving that complexity can be expressed through earthen pyramids and living orchards, not just through carved stone and written decrees, the garden cities demand a more generous definition of what it means to be advanced. Their advancement was measured in resilience, in sustainability, in a profound partnership with the natural world that allowed them to thrive for 1,000 years. This is not a lesser achievement, it is a different and perhaps more urgently relevant one. It reconnects us with the full spectrum of human ingenuity, reminding us that our ancestors were not just conquerors and kings, but also visionary gardeners and ecological engineers. As we stand at this remarkable intersection of cutting-edge laser technology and ancient, earth-based wisdom, we are offered a rare moment of clarity. The past is speaking directly to our present, offering profound lessons. In an age of climate uncertainty and resource anxiety, the model of the Garden City is a beacon. It proves that dense human populations and thriving biodiversity are not incompatible goals, that a civilization can enrich the land it inhabits. Their legacy in the Terra Preta soil and the managed forests is a testament to thinking in centuries, not in quarters, a lesson in patience and long-term stewardship we desperately need to relearn. Let this discovery be a call to view both history and our future with fresh eyes, with humility and boundless curiosity. The world is far older and wiser than our stories have allowed. If this journey into the hidden depths of the Amazon has reshaped your understanding of our shared past, consider subscribing. We explore history's greatest mysteries, revealing the lost chapters that redefine who we are. Share your thoughts on these incredible civilizations in the comments below. What part of their story resonated most with you? The conversation between past and present is just beginning.